Okay, hello everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Charter for Compassion Youth Voices in Politics series. We are honored to air and stream live our very first episode in honor of Golden Rule Day, which is today, the 5th of April. So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you are joining us. We have a wonderful panel with us here today, and we're going to be spending the hour just sharing thoughts and speaking about the foundation of the very interesting concept of the Golden Rule, which is a beautiful concept that has been around for many centuries, some would say the beginning of time, and we see its reflection across so many different faith traditions and so many different communities, and we also see the lack of it in so many areas. I think of our social, political fabric of societies and communities that we live in. So we thought it would be interesting to speak about the Golden Rule in light of politics from a specified youth angle. So we have a wonderful panel with us here today. We have a fairly intimate group from all over the world, and we'd love to just go around, maybe do a quick set of introductions before we get into our discussion for the day. So I will start. My name is Anim Mullah. I live in New Delhi, India. I am on the board of trustees for the Charter for Compassion, and I am also their global youth strategist. So this topic is very aligned with the work that I am doing for the Charter as we develop and continue to grow our global youth network. And of course, I think for me, the main reason of being here today is really to understand what the youth is feeling and what the youth is thinking when it comes to this very important and critical year of 2024 that we are in. We have around 64 elections all over the world, national elections. So I think it's such a great time to open this dialogue and really get into how we could use the Golden Rule to perhaps better serve society from the angle of politics. So again, that's my introduction, and welcome everyone. And I'm going to quickly pass it around so everybody can give a quick introduction before we get into our topic. And I would love to pass it first to my lovely friend, Vasu.
Thank you so much. I am Bhikkhu Vasubandhu. I am a Buddhist monk. I am from Mexico. I'm living in the United States. I have immigrated 3 years ago, 4 years ago to the US. I'm the interfaith manager for Arizona Faith Network. I'm serving in the International Youth Committee of Religions for Peace and on the North America Leadership Council of the United Religions Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Vasu. Thank you so much. Annabelle, can we hear a quick introduction from you and then our wonderful friend, Lyeth?
Hi, I'm Annabelle, calling from the United States of America, specifically San Antonio, Texas. I'm 18. I am the media team lead for a progressive group called Power of the People, where we are promoting a policy package called the Economic Bill of Rights, which reflects the Golden Rule and includes things like universal health care and climate action.
Okay, so finally for me, my name is Laith. I'm a Palestinian Jordanian. I am a 20-year-old student in Spain currently. I'm very involved in a lot of different things regarding kind of youth politics, activities, and collaborations that we do. And I am also the president of the European Arab Student Union.
Thank you so much, Annabelle and Laith, for your wonderful introductions. Again, on behalf of the Charter for Compassion, we're so honored to have all of you here. So thank you for taking out the time on this Friday to be here. And I think with that, it would be great if we just get right into it. We do have a few questions to go over, but I think when we speak about the Golden Rule, I'd like to open with everybody's thoughts on the Golden Rule itself before we get into our more centered questions about the Golden Rule and politics. So just as a reminder, and I'm just going to read a little bit of a excerpt that we have, which is actually from the Charter for Compassion website. So for anybody who is watching, if they don't know what the Golden Rule is, it is something that the Charter for Compassion is built on, and the Golden Rule truly stands as a cornerstone for the evolution of societies towards greater peace and harmony. And at its core, it urges individuals to transcend selfish impulses and cultivate a deeper understanding of one another. As societies embrace this principle, they embark on a journey of collective growth and enlightenment. By prioritizing empathy, cooperation, and mutual respect, communities can overcome divisions and build bridges across cultural, religious, and ideological differences. That's just how much I will read. There is a lot more there. So if anybody is interested, please, we encourage you to visit the Charter for Compassion website and read deeply through the material that is present about the Golden Rule. But I think in essence, the Golden Rule really embodies the idea of do unto others as you would like done to yourself. And that is, I think that principle can be applied in so many different ways in our personal lives, in our spiritual lives, and in our professional lives. But I'd love to just warm up the room and hear everybody's thoughts about the Golden Rule first before we tie it in with the political angle that we're here for. So please feel free to unmute. Let's just, I don't think we need to raise our hands because it's just a few of us. So any thoughts on the Golden Rule?
Yeah, I'll go first. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to say about the Golden Rule in relation to politics, but I do think that at the most basic level it is a very spiritual thing. The world's major religions all kind of converge on this idea that we should treat everyone with respect at their core. That's what the Quran teaches, and the Bible, including the Hebrew scriptures and the New Testament, they all teach us to be kind to other people and to do unto others as we wish upon ourselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely agreed, Annabelle. And thank you so much for bringing in the interfaith aspect of it. I think that's such an important tenet of the Golden Rule, that we see the interconnectedness and the repetitiveness of it in across all faith traditions. So I think that in itself it's ironic when we look at the way things are unfolding on the global stage today, because this is really what is imparted through all the different faith traditions. Yeah, thank you so much for bringing up that point. Vasu, I see you had unmuted yourself. Please go ahead.
Thank you. From my tradition and my practice in Buddhism, also we connect very deep with the Golden Rule, and we recognize the diversity of all expressions and religions. And something that is teaching me the Golden Rule is to learn how to live in harmony with the diversity and how to respect the diversity. So I feel the beauty and deep interconnection and interdependence with my tradition in Buddhism.
Thank you, Vasu. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay. And I think with that, Laith, unless you want to say something, we can go ahead. Please do share. I don't want to stop you. I feel like you had unmuted and then you muted again. So
No,
go for it.
worries. Well, it's kind of difficult to follow up something as beautiful as what Vasu just said. But basically, what I think for me and for a lot of people, the Golden Rule would be is that it's kind of a principle that basically most of the things in our world which drive us apart are actually a lot more alike than we may think. The foundations, the principles, the very core ideas of religious scriptures, of governments, of political systems and political theories are all based in very similar ideals. Sorry, excuse me, I'm at my university. However, it's those small differences that drive a wedge between a lot of different people. And I think what the Golden Rule is really emphasizes that we should focus more on the foundations and the principles of bringing us together instead of focusing on the small things that are tearing us apart.
Thank you so much, Lais. And I cannot agree more with what you said. And I really do think that not just from the youth perspective, but just from the human perspective, this is something that we're seeing all over the world today, that and again, I'm going to go back to using the word that I did in responding to Annabelle. I think there's a crucial irony that we keep seeing, because the things that are meant to keep us together or keep us aligned in thought of having this shared human experience are somehow what are becoming points of contention and corruption, and ending up in a place that are completely the opposite of what is actually the beautiful knowledge that is imparted. And that is, a lot of that is in faith traditions, and a lot of that is also, I think, not, even if you aren't somebody who follows a specific faith tradition, I think just out of the goodness of humanity, or the characteristics that we have as innate individuals who are wired innately with empathy and things like compassion, these virtues that we build, you would assume that you would be attracted to the knowledge and the theory of the golden rule. So I think it's something to really deeply consider, why we see a lack of it in so many different aspects of society. So thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. And I feel like that's a wonderful segue into our first question. And people from the audience, if you'd like to share your thoughts with any of the questions that we are asking, please do feel free to do that in the chat, and we'd love to read your answers at the end of the session. So our first question is, do you think aspects of the Golden Rule are present in public policies in your region? And if your answer is yes, would you mind sharing a few examples with us? And I'll go ahead and put this in the chat as well, just so we have it visually. There we go. And I think I'd like to say, I know we're in different time zones right now, so this answer might be different for all of us, given that we are sitting amongst, I think, very different structures of public policy that we might see in place.
Sure, I can start if you'd like. I think I'll refer my answer to Jordan, since that's where I grew up, and that would be basically the government or policies that I'm most familiar with. I think in terms of Jordan and what's happening in the Middle East and the region, I think the Golden Rule there, and also in other things, is applied a lot. For example, when it comes to our Palestinian family and brethren who are living right across from us, the Jordanian government tries as hard as they can to help them in a lot of different ways. And even when there's blockades on aids and there's a lot of different things, whether it be through the aid which they were trying to parachute in, although it may not be extremely efficient, the approach or the thought process behind trying to do something kind of, in my opinion, conveys that idea of the golden rule of trying to do something to help others. And besides that, there's also a lot of different things that I would say inside of Jordan itself, which isn't necessarily policies, which I would say is more of a culture that's translated into policy with actual legislation, which is basically that, as you may know, a lot of Palestinians, a lot of different refugees came into Jordan during the past 75 years. And all of those people, my family included, for example, have been treated as a part of the Jordanian family, and they have been treated as equals. And one of those really important, significant factors is that they see us as they see themselves and their families. And that for me is the idea of basically connecting, having compassion, being able to put yourself in someone's shoe, and then treating them the way that you would like to be treated if, God forbid, you were placed in an unfortunate situation like that.
Yeah, I want to continue in the topic about refugees and offering assistance to people from other countries. San Antonio is a sanctuary city, so that means that we prioritize helping in refugees that come into Texas and San Antonio. In particular, I think this was most shown in late 2016 when there were several hundred families released from ICE cages, and they were sent to San Antonio. And San Antonio, instead of pushing them away, we opened our arms and we gave them places to sleep in our churches and other places of worship. And I remember, I don't know if it was around the same time, but I was with an interfaith group writing letters to these migrants and placing them with sandwiches to give to them as they came into San Antonio to understand that they were loved and that they would be a part of our community here.
And my answer will be yes. I think aspects of the Golden Rule are present both in Mexico and in the United States of America. In my experience, when I was 18, I was living in Central America for a few years, and I connect with the community. And now we are receiving people who are migrants in Mexico, and we are hoping to create good policies for welcoming all people, all diverse people. And also here in the US, I have experienced myself the process of living the process of immigration in the US. And I believe that there is always good people in public policy who are working on that and are implementing compassion and understanding of the diversity.
Thank you so much, Vasu, for beautifully putting, I think, a more positive spin to that. And thank you, Annabelle and Laith, as well. I think it's so wonderful to hear positive examples, I think, of situations that arise in the political framework and in public policies, as well as, Laith, you mentioned cultural aspects of that. And I think it's impossible for an analysis of a nation's public policy to be devoid of the cultural impact that exists there, even if so often those two don't align, but it is for the people and it is embraced and upheld by the people. So I think it is as important to bring in the cultural angle. And I think with that, because you mentioned the Palestinian plight at the moment, it is important for us, not only as youth, but I think as global citizens of the world, to continue to acknowledge and honor the pain and the atrocities that continue to be inflicted on the people in Palestine. And for those of us who are active in our belief in God, may we all continue to pray for our brothers and sisters in Palestine. And I think, again, that is one such example that we can see on the world global stage, where even if the people may not necessarily think ill of something like the Golden Rule, it is difficult for that to be implemented at a more structural level when it comes to public policies, or when it comes to amplifying different laws that may help a situation. So it's very interesting to see that dynamic play out, I think, in the reality that we are living in at the moment. But thank you so much, all three of you, for sharing the different dynamics of public policies when we speak about something like the Golden Rule. And I think, just to go a little bit deeper into that, so when we speak about public policies in particular regions, and we look at the leaders, now whether these are community leaders or they are heads of state or even the local representatives for the governments, what would you say could be some of the potential benefits that these leaders may stand to gain by incorporating something like the Golden Rule into their political policies? This might be a very long and ambitious list, but just if we had to stand in a room, I think, with a political leader and sell the Golden Rule to them and tell them that these are the 5 things that perhaps you would really gain by incorporating something like the Golden Rule, which might reek of humanity when it comes to speaking to political leaders. But how would you make that case for them?
Personally, I think that humanity in itself is what actually makes the case, because I think for the leaders, taking into account, let's say, like their own self-interest in getting reelected and basically going through the entire political cycle and maintaining their career and everything, I think that humanity is something that can actually benefit them themselves, for example, because the idea of basically convincing them to display that, to embody it, to personify it, and to actually kind of live up to it. First of all, that will allow them to connect more to the people in their community. That will allow them to become more human to them, to become someone that they can connect to. Because something I've realized is that in a lot of these days in politics, people put up politicians on a pedestal where to the point that they don't necessarily treat them as human beings anymore. They treat them as ideas or symbols or characters, basically, not as human beings, as people like us. And I think basically by having them as people, by having them show humanity, show weakness, speak to everyone around them, that will allow them to actually embody the golden rule, and that will actually benefit them themselves. So I think that goes both ways. And through doing that, I think as a byproduct, better policies will pass, more people will listen to each other, and more effect and more change will come into our world.
Right.
No.
I'll go next.
Oh.
President,
Go ahead.
So President Franklin Delano Roosevelt once said that we wouldn't have to worry about a fascist takeover in this country if democracy simply delivered on its promises. And that is one of the core beliefs of my organization, Power of the People. We're working to fulfill democracy's promises of caring for its citizens and upholding the golden rule in public policies. Because I think when people start to see the golden rule in public policies and they start to see politics that is humanitarian, actually cares about people, then people become more interested in politics. It would be the opposite of the effect we're seeing now, where we have so many politicians who are like disillusioned with the golden rule, as you have said, and then that just keeps youth out of the conversation because they're like, well, I don't want to engage if like I'm not going to be heard. So I think we really that's what they stand to gain, is that they stand to gain people actually starting to care about politics, and it will become a self-reinforcing cycle of doing good things and then more people getting into politics to do more good things. So yeah.
For me personally, the benefits that I think the community leaders can stand to gain by incorporating the golden rule is well-being for everybody and understanding of the diversity. Building a interfaith society where everybody is part of the society and participate equally and have the same voice, the same capacity to be part of the society. Also, I believe in global diplomacy, which is very important for the safety and peace and harmony in each and all countries. So I think the Golden Rule incorporates a very essential and very important principles into politics, because politics could be a very diverse moment of perspectives or visions of ideas. But I think the Golden Rule brings harmony among the diversity of perspectives, and that lead us to the well-being of everybody.
Thank you, Vasu and Annabelle and Laith. I think I love the examples that you guys have given. And I think just going back to what really came up for me when all three of you were speaking is that if we go back into, I guess, the history of democracy, or just the order of politics in order to truly govern a region or a set of people for their betterment. And it's interesting because there is such a negativity bias, I think, that plays up for most people. And I don't know if you guys feel like that, but I certainly do. When I think about politics, and I'm so disappointed with the inaction that I see, especially in what we just spoke about when we look at current atrocities that are playing out, if, for example, in Palestine or in Sudan, and we look to our leaders to really be able to use that action and do something, and we see a lack of it. But we also see so many people who are trying to do things at, I guess, a national political level, but it doesn't seem to be what you might necessarily want as a citizen of a particular country to really see that full change. But I always try to bring that back down to a realistic understanding of it, to see that there are so many different structures in place that doesn't necessarily have to mean that an individual who is an elect representative of the government may not necessarily have ill intention. They may actually want to honor the golden rule, for example, since we're speaking about the golden rule, or they may want that good for the people, which is probably why they got into something like politics in the first place. However, there are so many structural issues, I think, that lead into a whole array of different topics. Corruption, of course, is one of them. And I know that in countries, for example, where I am, this is something that is very prevalent. And I'm sure it is in other parts of the world as well. But when we look at the different obstacles that really stop individuals from perhaps wanting to fulfill their desire of bringing good, 100% good, I would say, to the people, it's just interesting to sit back and look at what those obstacles could be. And I think that leads us into, while we've looked at the benefits of it, and we've looked at how we might convince political leaders to really adopt the golden rule to serve society. When we talk about this from, I think, more of a realistic angle, from the youth perspective, what do you think could stop them from wanting to actually adopt the golden rule? So let's say if we were to list a few obstacles, do you think that, and I'd love it if you could answer that specifically region wise, do you think that there are examples of obstacles in your region that are perhaps hindering this adoption of the golden rule for political leaders? And again, I think that list is probably very long for each of us, but what do you think is probably the most important of that list that you would like to discuss here today?
For here in America, and like all over the world, but particularly America, I think most fundamentally what is hindering the adoption of the golden rule is our economic system and our economic philosophy that was, like, heralded by Adam Smith in his Wealth of Nations. He's like, if people go out for economic interests in terms of themselves, then eventually it'll end up bettering society. But I don't think that the whole everybody out for themselves perspective has really worked. And I think that we need to rethink how we do that. And we need to think about how to implement the golden rule from an economic perspective as well, because if everybody is just out for themselves, then the golden rule is not implemented. And particularly that's reflected in the military industrial complex, because the weapons companies don't care about the lives of people. They just care about making money, and so they're out for their self-interest. And the politicians who support them are out for their political self-interest in funding the weapons companies. And then we see when there does come people in the political system who try to pull it out, how the people came off of the Marianne Williamson campaign. And I think that Marianne Williamson, who ran for the Democratic nomination this year in 2024, she did not win. She was very golden rule, kind of compassion and bringing spirituality into politics and everything. And she was consistently shut down and locked out because there's this whole system of everybody being out for themselves and nobody thinking about what it means to believe in your community and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, before I hand it over to Vasu, I know you've unmuted. I just wanted to respond to what you said, Annabelle. I think that would probably be such an excellent case study, specifically her campaign, which I know you were rooting for very, very strongly. For anybody who is watching here, Annabelle did a fantastic endorsement video that is up on YouTube. She spoke so beautifully and eloquently in that. So thank you for bringing that up. But I think that would be such a fantastic case study to see a presidential candidate or nomination for a candidate, if that's the correct way of saying it, really embrace and embody concepts that are aligned with the Golden Rule, and how that may not be what really sat well enough for people. I'm sure it did for a whole number, and perhaps even the larger the demographic of individuals who do want to see these kind of principles and foundations that make up public policies, or that have some kind of value with the person that they think will run their country. But just the fact that it didn't go through, this is I think this is exactly what the point of this discussion is that there is so much hope out there, and I think it is wise to always bring it back to that point of hope. But then when we see the paradox there of the reality of how many people might not see value in that, then you are often asked to wonder why that is. And I, for one, think a lot of that has to do with the education system. And I think that is a statement that we can make, that is a blanket statement, because it is all over the world. I think there is a lack of emotional intelligence that we are imparting to, when I say youth, I mean not our category of youth, I mean the younger children. I think this is something that we need to see in schools. We need to see this at a level from right through K through 12. And I really do believe that there is so much there to work with. And I think there is a really big shift that is happening with all of the events that we are seeing unfold in the world today, the active genocides that are taking place, the atrocities that continue, the unjust, I think, outcomes that we are seeing of so many different political leaders and their squabbles, if that's a minimized way of saying what is going on. But anyways, I think we see the youth really stepping out to be active in using their voice and being vocal about what is right and what is the right thing to stand up for. And I think we do see a lot of the Golden Rule present in the general voice of the youth. So I feel like, for me, as a member of the youth community in the world right now, that makes me proud. And I also think, I know that was a different tangent that I went on, but I thought I would like to bring that point up to what you said, Annabelle. And again, I think for me, my answer would really be education. It's probably the biggest obstacle, and I would love to see. I would love to see more of that implemented across different schools all over the world in education systems. But yes, Basu and Layeth, please feel free to comment.
Thank you so much. Personally, I also feel and I also think that democracy values and democracy systems also allow us to participate in different ways, including to run for office, including to run to be a elected official. So I think that's a big opportunity for everybody, all people, to also have the opportunity to participate in that way. Also, sometimes happen in Mexico and in the United States that in some politics groups, there is the idea that to be compassion or to be kind is to be weak. And I think that's a very difficult and hard process that we are living in some societies, that there is some presidential candidates who think that to have compassion is weakness, where I believe personally that is a strength and is a beautiful capacity to understand others. But I think that's very important to incorporate the golden rule into politics, and into all the diverse groups of politics, all the diversity of politics. I also believe that the religions, we have a important role. Each one and all of us, I think we can do a lot to continue promoting compassion and the golden rule. Sometimes some people into politics also have a religion identity. So I think that for us as religions, we can inspire them to continue living in compassion and applying the golden rule. Thank you.
So I guess that leaves me. I think personally for me, what I would say is the biggest obstacle is one that really extremely resonates with me personally and my region, but I think is one that could resonate with everyone worldwide, which is honestly, which might be a controversial opinion to say actually, the establishment and the kind of attention and development that is given to political parties of different statures. And the reason that I'm saying that is that because all of these political parties, for example, let's say in the United States, you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, each one has a perception of the other that they're complete evil and they don't listen to each other's ideas, they don't take anything from one another, and they just basically work to demonize the other one without listening to your opponent, without listening to what the other person is saying and actually taking that and implementing it. The way that I perceive it basically is that each of these different ideas, political parties, political theories, all of those different things, they're all imperfect because they were concocted, they were developed, they were brought up by human beings who are imperfect, as we all are. And therefore, these ideas, these theories, these political parties are all imperfect. So to idealize any single one of them and to say that this is the correct one, to say that this is the one that we should follow, to say that this is the one that we have to basically use, I think is completely irresponsible and wrong. I think each of them stem from a basic idea of a fundamental factor which hopes to better the world, and we should actually look at that. For example, a lot of people can perceive the basic idea of communism is that it is looking for a collective equality of people working together and coming together, not the other things. Capitalism, if you look at the basic fundamental idea, it's that it wants to reward people for its hard work. Every single political system, political theory, political idea has a basic idea which hopes to basically better the world and improve it, and that's what we have to look. That's what we have to look at, and that's what we have to get from each and every single one of them. We can't demonize the good and the bad in all of them and just focus on one, because that one thing is imperfect. It was developed by people such as us. And I think based on that and everything, I'd like to give an example actually from my region, in Palestine particularly, actually. So in Palestine, one of the major problems that the Palestinian people are facing is the number of political parties that keep popping up. Even for example, as Palestinians here, for example, in Spain, once we get together sometimes and go to protest, you hear a lot of different people mentioning, for example, different political parties and allegiances and things like that, which for me personally, I find very distracting, because fundamentally, we're all working towards the same goal. And it's these small differences which are stopping us from reaching that goal. And I think that the people who want us to stop doing that, the people who want to disrupt the change, the coming of change in our world in a positive way, they realize that and they actually finance it. For example, I'm sure many of you know this, but for those of you that don't, the war right now between Hamas and Israel, which thousands of Palestinians are dying and which has turned into a genocide. Netanyahu in 2019, when addressing his Knesset, said that if they want to stop Palestine from ever becoming an established state and from ever allowing Palestine to come forward as a state, then they have to fund Hamas. What they do is that they actually feed into this idea of different small political parties that divide people, and they start funding them, they start encouraging them, they start allowing them to kind of separate so that people can stray further away from each other and not come closer together. That's why they fund numerous different political parties. That's why they ask them to come forward to basically separate people from each other. And while the differences start becoming smaller and smaller, you start having branches of the same different political parties, then branches of the branch, then another separate branch, and they keep dividing people more and more. And that's a way of basically stopping them from reaching that objective. And I think that we as a collective, as a people, that if we ever want to move forward, start basically kind of moving into the world and really starting to better it, we have to start listening to everyone that's around us. We have to start listening to our allies and to our enemies. And we have to start basically looking at the different political theories and ideas and looking at the fundamental principle of each of them and looking at how we can use it. And at the same time, those who want to divide us, want to finance and support the division of our collective people, of our nations, of our communities, we have to know how to stand up to them, and we have to focus ourselves on our principles that bring us together instead.
Thank you so much, Leth. I think what you've said, it brings up so much, and I also want to thank you for sharing that example with us, because I think there are so many people right now who maybe really need to dig deeper in terms of knowledge and historical context, especially when it comes to the Middle East, and when we're looking at it from a political perspective in terms of really analyzing what has led to this awful lived reality that we continue to share every single day as we see the genocide unfolding as it is in Palestine. So thank you so much for sharing those details with us. And I think it's so important to be able to have different voices from different regions when we talk about something like this, because going back to what you said, Vasu, I love the fact that you brought up the term weakness. And I think this is something that we see all across the board when we speak about the human values and virtues of empathy and compassion. So often they are deemed as weaknesses. And I think for anybody in the audience or any of us here who steps out to read even just a little bit about the neurobiological understanding that science has come to when we survey human virtues and values, like I said, of empathy and compassion, what we see is these are cognitive distortions or thinking traps, for an easier access to that language. It is truly a cognitive distortion when you demean, I think, such an incredible strength of the human being that we see displayed through being able to be compassionate, and then you tie that in with something like weakness, because it actually takes such a deep amount of resilience and strength to practice that compassion, because it is something you are doing for the other. So I think just even if we start, when we look at that from a political perspective, and we view that as an obstacle for why political leaders may not necessarily want to incorporate the golden rule. And I think just going back to what Annabelle said as well, it all ties in with the example that she gave of Marianne Williamson's campaign in the United States. So it's so interesting to, I think, find common points for me as a listener to what all three of you are saying. And I also, Annabelle, I can see that your hand is raised. So right before I give it to you, I did also want to go back to something Laith said, which was so beautiful about division. I think this is something that we might know theoretically, and it's great when you sit and you talk about it. And when we see it in action, it so often falls short. And I think as youth, it is something that is not just our responsibility, it is our duty to really take that value of unity forward. And I love the way you put it, Laith, in terms of having that listening and having that understanding, even for, let's say, the opposing party, whether that's politics or whatever example we want to take that into in our respective lives. I think that might be a good place to start, to be able to overcome those obstacles and work toward some kind of a shared humanity that takes us back to our understanding of humanity to begin with, right? Which is, I think, also what you commented on when you were giving us that example, that these policies were put into place by mere human beings, and we often forget that as we continue to idolize the different policies and the different parties that put them into place sometimes when they align with our best interest. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And Annabelle, please, I would love to hear what you have to say. I know you had your hand raised.
Yeah, you just mentioned something about the human experience, and like it like clicked in my science brain. You know, I'm a very sciencey person, so I think people often forget that humans are a social species. Like, we're not supposed to be like stabbing each other all the time and doing this. The whole human survival strategy is to stick together and care for each other, even from a like strictly evolutionary perspective. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to point out.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, Annabelle. Yes, and I think you're absolutely right. I think so. So for me, my background is empathy and compassion skill facilitation, which really takes all of its theories and content and principles from this area of neuroscience particularly, but also science. And there is so much data and research out there that has been done when we look at, I think, exactly what you said, the evolution of human beings and the fact that we have always stuck together, and there is a conscious, I think, bias that comes out in different areas, which translates into, for example, our in-group bias, right? Which is we will always have the tendency to gravitate towards those who we see as our in-group, whether that's gender, whether that's race, whether that's in today's context, just the way we speak, or the things we identify with, or the things we like or dislike. And I think that is such an interesting point when you bring it under the political lens, because again, going back to Leith's point, right? It is that in group that might stop you from seeing the other. And I think that is just a disservice to our full human capacity of emotions and experience on this life journey that we are all on at the same time, right? Because you want to be able to maximize that unity and break through your biases to continue to evolve together, however ambitious a statement like that might sound. And I think with that, and I'm very aware of time. I know we only have about 10 minutes left, and this has been such an inspiring discussion. So thank you, all of you. And I think with the sentiment that we are generally feeling right now, I would love to put our last question out there in light of everything we have discussed. And I know there's been some great commentary in the chat as well. So thank you for that to those who have written in the chat. But I would love for us to maybe end our webinar today with really thinking about from a realistic angle. And I know I'm mindful of the fact that I have used that term so often in this webinar, but as you can see, I think I'm a little, for me, I'm a little wary when it comes to politics and things actually realistically happening. So if you had to answer this question, how would you say the golden rule could realistically be applied to different political initiatives in your region right now, or even in the future?
I can start. Well, myself personally, I'm placing all of my faith in this regard in the youth themselves, actually, because I think that they're the ones who are still currently, let's say, developing. They're the ones who have the future in their hands, and they're the ones who can actually bring this to happen. But I think the responsibility is both on us as the youth of this generation, and also um, the older generation who's kind of, let's say, supervising us or supervising our transition into their place eventually. I think between the two of us, we have to kind of work together in order to establish kind of a platform, a system, and a structure which kind of builds upon youth governance and empowerment and allows them to kind of learn from each other, from the different youth and from the different areas that they come from. Instead of basically educating people about the different political parties and systems and theories and basically letting them choose one, let them instead listen to each other and learn from each other and discuss with each other, just like with a common sense of logic and basics, basically. And I think that's different between between each different country. But that's why I say it's responsibility on us as the youth and the people who are supervising us, I would say, because, for example, let's say in Jordan or Palestine, a part of it would be that we would be engaged in conversation between members of different tribes or different areas or different political ideals, which may not necessarily be present in other nations around the world. And I think something like that is very important. And whether it be through youth parliaments, youth governments, youth summits, or any different things, just putting it forward with the idea and principle of listening to differing opinions and seeing basically the good in all of them. I think that's the first step. And I think that will actually create the environment to live like that in the future once we're all older. Once we're all older.
I'll go next, and I'm gonna go super fast because I don't want to waste anybody's time here. So I think in San Antonio, a particular problem that we have is with the housing crisis and our large homeless population. So I think that in our region we should prioritize homeless care and housing first policies because we need to connect with the most vulnerable among us to really build up a better society.
In my perspective, for me, I think also including policy consultations, education and awareness of the Golden Rule, also crisis response and review the policies through the lens of compassion. I also think religious freedom will be important in this process. Some individuals who are part of the process of creating policies have also a faith or religion, and faith can inspire them. So I think also the diversity of religions, we play an important role on that, to inspire that, to create inclusivity in all societies, to include LGBT plus people, women, and all diversity of identities. For me, as a gay person, has been very important to live in a harmonious society. So I think through this, we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all three of you, for your thoughts. I deeply resonate with everything that all three of you have shared. And I think for me, if I had to answer this question, so much of it would be what each of you have said. But I think, yes, just going back to what the sentiment of this whole conversation has been, that even though there is a deep acknowledgement of the fact that maybe sometimes the political systems and structures that are in place are not able to implement the Golden Rule. But I think what's really come through this conversation is that there is still a number of people out there who do want to implement the Golden Rule and who do see value in it, not just out of the simple kindness of their heart, but out of an actual tangible service to society, which is really going to hopefully create a better future for those that we leave the world behind too. And I think, again, just to continue on that note of youth, I do really personally believe that it is not just our responsibility, as I said, it is our duty to be able to encapsulate all of that wisdom that we are receiving, less, like you said, from the elders, or Annabelle, like you said, from a specific housing problem that you were speaking about in terms of the community you live in, or Vasu, like you said, identities. I think these are all different characteristics of one big problem that we have, which is more representation for youth in political systems, and really being able to use principles or even just components of the Golden Rule, even if it's not all of it, but just one shred of that, into bringing about more of a voice for youth in political parties, and also the way that policies, as we spoke of, are implemented from the youth perspective. And it's always so wonderful to be able to hear other people's thoughts on this. And I think, again, it certainly gives hope. And I'll speak from the eye, at least for me, when I see, and I cannot stress this enough, when I see youth who are so active, they are always the front liners in all of the protests, whether that is for Palestine, whether that is for women's rights, whether that is just for this notion of a just society for all of us. And I think when you reflect on that, you really see that there is an urgency that the youth are able to truly feel and bring to the arena, right? Because they know that perhaps this is something that's going to affect their very near future. So it's wonderful to be able to capitalize on that energy. And I really hope that for those watching and for all of us in our own regions, we can really just continue to push forward that agenda and try to best serve whatever political parties we choose to affiliate with from the lens of the Golden Rule. So those are my closing thoughts and responses to what all three of you said. So I want to take a minute to thank all three of you for joining us today. And thank you to the audience for listening in. We had wonderful comments from Karen and Steve. Thank you so much. I encourage the panelists to have a look because there are some beautiful words in there for all of you. So please do have a look. And I'd love to just open it up for any last thoughts from our panel here. I don't want to have the last word. So if any of you would like to say anything, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I guess I'll speak in terms of Power of the People, my organization. So we are kind of moving forward with expanding to a larger group. And in the next month or so, we should have a website up. And we also hope to have like something up on YouTube that's like an official launch. We already have one video up on our YouTube channel, which is just called Power of the People. I think the name of the video is called FDR Message or something. So yeah, I just encourage everybody to check that out and maybe consider joining because this is what we're really advancing. I mean, obviously we have more of a focus on the United States, but we are open to everybody from the international community coming in.
Thank you, Annabelle. Thank you for sharing that information with us. All right. Vasu, go ahead.
Thank you. Today that we are here in this beautiful conversation of youth voices in politics, my hope is that we can build a interfaith society, multilingual, multicultural, in everything, with all the diversity of identities. And my hope is that we can do this together, that we are not alone, that we are on this together.
Thank you, Vasu. Thank you. My hope is that too. And thank you for so beautifully and eloquently wording that for us. Thank you. And I know we are right at the end of our time. So I just wanted to say thank you so much again to our wonderful panelists who are definitely leaders of youth in their own community and each doing such fantastic work. So we are honored to have had your voice with us today at the Charter. And thank you to our audience for watching and wishing everybody a restful weekend. And as I said, our love and prayers continue for all of those affected by the terrible genocides and atrocities that we are continuing to see unfold. So very valuable to have had everybody's voice on that topic as well for this webinar. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.